And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to your favorite Chicago show. It is that one and only Because Chicago. And of course, I am your man, Jerome. Spend Pretty's face on ITC. Don't you forget that. That's right. And of course, I'm here with my partner in crime. He is that man that drops all the facts and it feels like an attack. Your mind is getting blown and you like, oh no, David ran up in my home. He is that man that brings all the spicy. He ready to let y'all know about the greatest city in the world. He is that man, Dirty Dave.
My lawyers advised me to say for legal reasons I did not enter your home. That wasn't me. I appreciate it, Jerome. What's up, man? How we feeling today?
Bro, I'm feeling good, man. It's always good. Like, hell, fuck, you know, you're one of my good friends, man. I always love being able to sit down and do this show with you. Like, this is something we want to do for quite a while. So it's always a great time when I get to just sit and rap with my guy. But of course, this week, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get into all of the stories with Chicago this week. And we might as well start with Chicago baseball because that is what is getting spicy right now. All that being said, we might as well pick up right where we were last week when we talked about Chicago baseball because we're basically in the same position. Cubs are playing all right. White Sox are playing like boo-boo, bro. So, Dave, where do you want to start with this week on Chicago baseball? Where do you want to go?
Man, I was luckily able to go see both teams in person this past week. And, they were the games were so emblematic of the season so far for the two teams because I went to a White Sox game where 4-0 they were up after the first inning and they lost, which just tracks. I mean, that is the White Sox season through and through right now. I mean, it's just if 4-0 in the first inning against the guy making his third career start, you're like, oh man, they are gonna get this guy. He's done for. And then he just settles in, and nobody's getting base hits. And then all of a sudden, it's now they get a run back. Now they get another run back, and now they got a lead. Now the game's blown wide open. It was bad. And then I got to go to the Cubs game on Friday, where we almost saw a perfect game happen, and Cubs put up 13 runs, and we got to see a little Yan Gomes putting together his tape for playing linebacker for the Bears with the draft coming up. By tackling the starting pitcher. I mean, if he wants to play, I'm sure we could sign him, but we didn't have to do all that. I mean,
so I saw the clip of that happening. You were in the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
How did the crowd react when that happened? Because I haven't watched the clip with any sound. I've only watched the clip, and I was like, oh, that's a super tough way to lose a game, right? The perfect game.
Usually when something bad happens to a home team, you kind of get like the groans and the the crowd. This was pin drop silence. Nobody knew what was happening. Everyone just kind of stood there like, what it's over? That's what? Nobody made a noise. It was just dead silence. And it was so funny, man. I mean,
it's like everybody in the stadium was thinking in their head, no, not like this, not like this.
And of course, it's hard to explain, but this if you go to a game and you got something going on, and you're like, oh man, I want to see my team win. 2 outs, pot in the ninth. Something bad happens, and it's just like you're just like hoping, praying to the baseball gods that like somehow they're gonna make a mistake. They're gonna be like, oh no, actually that was an error because the two guys collided. And it's not. You're maybe if they call it an error, he still has no hitter going. Please call an error. And you're like, that's not an error, man. Come on, that's a hit, but you just hope. Come on, make a mistake, please. Call it an error. And no, then the hit goes up on the board, and everyone just goes, oh.
Of course, man. But at least the Cubs, with that happening, at least they didn't just fall completely to pieces after that, right? They still managed to play decently. Get the dub, right? Which is most important at the end of the day, right? The W is the most important thing there. But I have to say, though, I know myself, I was being very, very critical of the Cubs pitching. We saw a performance right there, Dave, out of one of the guys in the rotation that we were both looking at, like, I don't know about that. Does that performance give you more hope and optimism with him? Hoping that maybe this could be like how how sometimes pitchers just have like that one really great year, that maybe we caught him on that one great year.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. In fact, I don't know the exact numbers. You know, but since in his last like 15 starts, Drew Smiley has been one of the best pitchers in baseball statistically. His ERA is like under, I think his ERA is under 2.5, and 3 of those starts he's gotten hit hard too. So you think about the other 12 starts, I mean, he's given up like 1 or fewer run in almost every game. He's really pitching like how the way that I can describe it to kind of do a drawback is a few years ago when the Cubs got Cole Hamels, and he came in for that last half season, and he was literally like, people were like starting to say, like, is he going to get some votes for Cy Young in the National League? He was pitching that well for the Cubs. And Smiley's been that good. He had 1 really bad start to start the year. The last 2 have been very good. The last half of last year was really good. People kind of forget how well he pitched in the game in Iowa. I can't think of the name right now. Oh my God. But
don't worry. The Field of Dreams
game last year, and he pitched really well. He got the win in that game. So I mean, he's been consistently good, and I think that we just didn't really realize it because last year everyone kind of tuned out in June. Fair enough, yeah. But I think it's right now he's definitely been, you know, their 3rd best pitcher, and you know, we got 1 guy on the injured list, another guy just not performing up to the standards we were hoping he would perform up to as a young starter. And you know, Drew being that 3rd guy, very important, and hopefully Brad Boxberger can shore up the end of the bullpen as well. It's not going to be Michael Fulmer.
Oh no! Listen, bro. If any city in the world knows about Michael Fulmer and what he is as a player, it's Chicago. No, nobody believes in him. Not a soul. Not what. Look, I bet you if you called up Michael Fuller's mama right now and say, "Hey, Mike, you believe Michael gonna hold it down for him?" Then she'd be like, "I love my son, but nah."
I love my son, but no. Yeah, he's bad. He's really bad. You know, but I mean the Cubs. I mean, I'm telling you, they keep. Every week we're going to talk about them. They might keep inching closer and closer to having to really spend, you know, one of these prospects as on a closer at the deadline, because they might be a bullpen away. Which if you told me that before the season, I would be ecstatic, but also hesitant to believe you.
Well, when you say that though, okay, so you're saying they might have to give up a prospect. While we're on the topic of the prospects, who's the guy that you say? It doesn't matter unless you're getting a superstar player. You can't get rid of that guy out of the prospects.
Listen, I've been a PCA guy since they got him. I mean, he is, and he really, really fits everything the Cubs want. He is a contact hitter. He plays great in the field, great on the base paths, guy who plays 110% every single day. You know, I mean, fortunately for them, they don't have to make a decision on him anytime soon because Cody Bellinger's a 300 hitter. But, you know,
I'm gonna tell you something surprises me. Like Cody Bellinger is Mr. Up and Down. Him hitting 300 right now is insane, dude. Insane. Yeah. It reminds me of more like how he was playing when he first came up his rookie year, like that rookie year. You remember that where he just came out the gates and he was hot as hell, and it seemed like, oh my God, this guy might turn around and be one of the best bats in baseball. That's what this performance this season has reminded me out of him for sure.
Yeah, and you, I think you kind of expect it. There were still a few things that he was really good at in LA, even when he was struggling. He was still very clutch. I mean, he was the kind of guy who, you know, when he got to the plate in a big spot, you could still count on him to get the ball in play. He was still a guy who was playing great defense. He still got his steals. He still walked. He still did all that stuff. Now he's also getting the bat on the ball, and I think the shift is really one of the biggest things as well. You know, he had 1 year where he was a big power hitter, but besides that, I think he's a guy who wants to hit the ball around the bases, and you know, he really wants to, you know, be a guy who can pull a line drive for a base hit, and he's been able to do that quite a bit this year. He hasn't been able to do that in recent years. That ball's going straight to the second baseman. So he's definitely benefited. And I got to give props to Jed Hoyer for knowing he was to be a guy who was going to benefit from these rule changes. It seems like they got quite a few guys who are going to benefit. And so far it's been working out.
I think that's one of the sneaky things that is making baseball more fun and more watchable this year is the rule changes on the shifts. It's something that I think me and you actually talked about this years ago, man, where it's like, it gets kind of lame when you're watching 7 guys are shifted to the right side because you know a guy's a push or a pull hitter, right? Depending on whether he's right or left. You know the ball's going there. you're taking all the excitement out of the game. Like, yeah, in a sports fan's mind, you say, hey, the guy should just slap the ball the other way. But we know that's just not how baseball works. Some guys are push hitters, some guys are pull hitters. There's those rare hitters that like spray to all fields, right? Like, most of those guys are some of the best hitters in the league right now. So I'm glad to see the rule changes. I know there were some people that were like kind of pushing back to it and like, oh no, this is going to be no. It makes the game more fun, dude. Because I was getting real tired of stuff that I like hard hit ground balls that used to be CNI singles that because of the shifts were just instant ground ball outs. And it's like, I was so sick of that crap, man. Like, I'm sick of seeing hard hit balls. Well, it's hit right to the defender because we didn't shifted everybody right there. It's like, this is lame. This is for entertainment, baby. Like, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be entertained. But I did ask you about PCA, well, about what's the prospect you wouldn't want to get rid of. And I agree with you on PCA, but I also have one other guy, and it might be recency bias, but I think Amaya's got something. I think Miguel Amaya really has got something. I think he has put it together. Looking at the fact that his performance has continued to go up, and now it seems like he's put it all together, and we're seeing how much of a complete hitter he can actually be. He's another guy that I think I would add on that list with PCA to say, hey, look, man, I know we need to trade good guys, but we don't need to trade these guys. Like, these two guys could be part of our core moving forward. So hopefully we can continue to see Pete. For those that don't know, it's Pete Crow Armstrong. That's why we call him PCA, baby. It's a lot easier, right? It sounds better than me being like, hey, Pete Crow Armstrong, right? PCA just, you know what I mean? It comes off the tongue smoother.
Yeah, Crow Armstrong doesn't roll off the tongue. You're right.
No, not at all. So hopefully him and Amaya can continue to progress, and we'll see that. But we got to get to the south side here. We got to talk about these guys over here. So, Dave, we've continued to see the White Sox struggling a little bit, right? Like they are just one game, they seem like they're the team that we expected them to be. And then the next three, it's like they're just nothing but a toilet bowl special. And with the people that they have on that roster, at least the bats, right? I cannot understand what is happening with that team outside of you screwed up something in that chemistry when you brought in Tony La Russa, and it hasn't been right since. Because I really have tried to look at it, Dave, and be like, okay, what's the major difference between that team roughly about 4 years ago before they hired La Russa, right? And now, what is the difference? And the only thing I can think of is like, dude, you hired Tony La Russa and just messed up your whole chemistry and made guys start feeling bad about themselves, because we know baseball is a mental game, right? We know half the battle for you is whether inside your head you are not just lost and thinking about things that you shouldn't be, right? So when you look at this White Sox team, what can they do to fix their problems at this point and to get themselves into a competitive baseball team? So like we said, which is just give us some competitive baseball and make the summer fun.
Put in a request to the Major League Baseball to play a AA all year. I don't know. I mean, this is it's not a good team. That baseball, man, you have to have depth. They have no depth, and they keep throwing out these guys in the field that don't play the position to get only decent bats up. They can't stay healthy. Pedro Grifol is having maybe the worst first 20 games of a manager's career ever. I mean, every single game you look at Pedro Grifol and you go, you see a mistake he made and you go, well, that's probably why you lost that one, right? I mean, the game I went to last week Sunday against the Orioles, Grayson Rodriguez up to 4-0 game. After that, I don't know what he said in the dugout after that first inning, but the team comes out. They have they're not working at accounts against a guy who is a flamethrower who walks a ton of people, and they're swinging first, second pitch every single time up. And I'm like, why are you not trying to force this guy to throw you strikes? You are swinging at balls in the dirt, grounded out to second base when you should be letting him walk you. It doesn't do that. And then he leaves Dylan Ceason for way too long. I mean, he got to like 100. He was at like 90-something pitches. And then Grifol sends him out for another inning and lets him work through that whole inning, throwing 20-something more pitches. He made his career high in pitches on Sunday with like 115 to get through 6 innings. and get a no decision because you lost
Crazy.
anyways. I mean, that was
6
one of
innings? Like, that's awful. That is terrible management.
mind-bogglingly bad management. And he keeps trying to make Reynaldo Lopez a closer. Reynaldo Lopez is a former starter who was good for a few innings in low leverage situations last year. And now you're sending him out there against, the Tampa Bay Rays to close the game for you? What is the progression? How did you get to that point? This is like pause. I bet you're wondering how I got here, right? That's Reynaldo Lopez watching that ball go up into whatever deck the Lao sent that ball to. I mean, it's crazy, and really when you think about the difference is it, in my opinion, is the depth. I mean, there are players that White Sox fans will probably laugh about, but to be the first guy off the bench, they were fine. I mean, I went to their baseball reference from 2020 when they went 35-25, that year you were talking about, where they looked like they had all this swagger. They made the playoffs. They won game 1 in Oakland. You're like, okay, this team's really on the up and up. And I mean, I'm looking at their bench. I mean, first of all, they got guys like Edwin Encarnacion as DH, but they have outfielders playing the outfield. I mean, they have Luis Robert still. They have Jimenez as your DH, but I mean, here's guys who are not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, but they're better than what they got right now. Guys like Adam Engel, guys like Leori Garcia, who they just got rid of. I mean, he was a fine, 11th best player on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's gone. They trade. We know why they traded away Nick Madrigal. They wanted that, closer to help at the back end of the rotation. But I mean, you look at guys like that, and they didn't replace them with anybody. I mean,
Nope.
They send out players that I go, what? Who is that? I mean, what's the second baseman they got?
I call those Daves. Those are that. Who that is and still in the league? That's who those guys are. That's that category right there. Where it's like, wait, what? You're really sending out this person? Here's what's wild to me. When you look at the White Sox as a team right now, the thing that is the most alarmist to me about the entire situation, right, is you have one guy in your entire, well, let's say 2, because Tim, he's like right about there. You got 2 guys that are batting above 300. 300 or above. That's it. And both of those guys are on the injury list right now. Like, the White Sox are not going to be a superpower team, so that means you have to be a team that's willing to move guys station to station, right? You got to move guys from base to base. And there's no way you're doing that when look at 2 of the guys you named, right? You talked about the outfield with Luis Robert Jr. and Oscar Colas, right? Both of these guys are batting 233. How are you batting 233 at this point in the season, bro? What is going on?
And shout out to Colas. At least Colas tries to get on base. At least he takes a few walks. Luis Robert is an on-base percentage of 250. By the way, since we're talking about Pedro Grifol, Jerome, my man Jerome's fan, where does Luis Robert bat in the lineup every single day?
In a spot that he shouldn't bat.
Number 1. That's the guy you're like, all right, set the tone for us, baby. Set the tone for us. Get out there. 1 out of every 4 times you might hit first base. Maybe. I mean, if you go on their page right now, I mean, they got guys that I'm like, come on, like this is not Lennon Sosa. What is a Romy Gonzalez? Romy Gonzalez? Jerome, you know anybody who ever had the first name Romy, Romy?
No. You know what? That sounds like some bad anime character's name, like that just made up somewhere. This is Romy. You know what I mean? That's that
What's
name.
that? That old school baseball game that was like it was made in Japan. They tried to make fake American names. That sounds like Romy Gonzalez would be the guy that would be playing second base for that team. But no, here he is playing for the White Sox. They got Hanser Alberto. They got, I mean, come on.
It's a disgusting roster, especially, because like we were talking about with the A's, right? Sometimes you get guys that are value when you're doing the money ball situation, right? But the White Sox don't got guys that are value right now. Like, they got a bunch of guys that are, if we were arguing underpaid or overpaid, majority of the team, you said, is overpaid based off of their performance. Their performance has been so piss poor, so I'm hoping that maybe when Moncada and Tim get back, right, I'm hoping that will change some of this dynamic, because then you have two of your better hitters back. Moncada, I've still got questions about it. I know Tim Anderson's a good hitter, but Moncada, I don't know if he's going to put it together for a whole season, right? But regardless, as it stands right now, as your roster is built, they're two of your better options. And that's not good when we're talking about Moncada's a career 254 hitter. Good God almighty, man. 254, bro. Whew.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, it's, I think one of the things that maybe even the Sox organization did was, we always said as Cubs fans, this isn't normal. It's not normal to have, 4 or 5 prospects and every single one of them hits. And they only hit for 1 year anyways. So, I mean, we were right. Obviously, we kind of predicted our future. But, for Sox fans, they were counting on Eloy Jimenez. Man, Jerome, you're a Cubs fan. How many times did you get the thanks Cub messages about Eloy Jimenez every time he did a home run? Was it every other day for you?
Bruh. All I'd hear is every White Sox fan was acting like Eloy Jimenez was Mike and Trout or something, bro. I swear to God, that's how annoying it was getting. Honest to God.
Yeah, well, that dude's batting 200 right now. I mean, enough's enough. I mean, thanks Cubs. I mean, Nick Madrigal at least gets on base for the second trade the Cubs and Sox made at the deadline. Cody Hoyer, who knows? I mean, yeah, you got Dylan Cease, and Dylan Cease is phenomenal. I mean, I said when the trade was made, I was more upset about losing Dylan Cease than I was about losing Eloy Jimenez, for sure. I mean, Dylan Cease is a bona fide ace. There's no doubt about it, but they expected Luis Robert to be an MVP. Luis Robert has stretches where he's a great player. Luis Robert is a good player. Luis Robert is not an MVP right now. Yoan Moncada, they got him from the Chris Sale trade. They said, oh, he's going to be an MVP. He sure is not an MVP. They signed Yasmani Grandal and thought they were going to get 5 or 6 years of the best catcher in baseball. Yasmani Grandal has to walk to first base half the time. He can't even run anymore. The man's got no knees. I mean, he is... he's at least he gets on base, right? He's got a 360 on base percentage. Good for him. But I mean, you expected Jake Berger to stay healthy, and
who would have thought, Dave, that you signed a 30-year-old catcher that his knees would be done a couple years into the deal? Who would have thought, right? Who could have guessed?
Man, even at the time listen, that deal to me just never made sense. He was too old.
No.
And listen, now I was wrong about this, but I was like, man, look what James McCann did last year. He was fine. He was a good catcher for the Sox, and they had guys in the minor league system. Zach Collins was ready to go, and I was like, you don't need a catcher. What do y'all? Now, they did need a catcher because all those guys ended up being terrible, but
But the plus is not, for Grandal, you're not getting that much more, that paying him that money and giving up what you had to give up to bring him in. I don't think you can say that that's value and that that's worth it, right? He's, like you said, he can't even run down to first base anymore. Goodness gracious, people, how bad is that? We've seen, look, man, we saw what was the old Pirates catcher's name? He was in the league for forever. I think he played for the A's and the Pirates.
Jason Kendall.
Thank you. You know exactly. Jason Kendall was out there playing catcher for forever, bro. So sometimes there are guys that can do it. But most of the time, we see what we've seen here, right? You know what it is? I think the Molina brothers got everybody fooled. This is what it is, Dave. Because we saw Benji and Yachty were in the league for forever, right? Both of those guys were playing in the league for forever and a day. So I think some people got a little confused with, hey, dude, your catcher, you usually grind through that guy pretty damn quickly. You at max, say you brought him in from draft and then up to the majors. Professionally, as far as major league, you're probably lucky if you get 5 to 6 solid years out of that guy before their bodies just grind it out. Unfortunately, it's the most physical position in baseball. You're constantly having to grind. First off, you're grinding yourself out with your knees in all these squats. Then you have to be dodging to block balls and all this. Your body's grinding up, baby. So
Yeah,
I
I
think that
mean, look at the most recent catcher MVPs. I mean, Joe Mauer after age 30 was
terrible.
he couldn't stay on the field, and he was bad when he was on the field. Buster Posey had that 1 year in 2020, that 1 year when the Giants were good, where he was really good again. The 5 or 6 years before that, he was league average. You can't depend on that. When you're signing a 30-year-old to a big deal at the catcher position, you got to know he's not going to make it all those years. I mean, we see teams sign these 12-year contracts all the time, and you're like, you know that guy's not going to be good when he's 46. Why are you signing him to this deal? You thought Albert Pujols, who's probably already older than we thought he was going to play for 10 years at a high level, Angels? I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? I mean, Yasmani Grandal just never made sense as a guy to give that much money at that term to. You want to give him a 2-year, $40 million contract? Hey, I would have been fine with that. But I was a 4 and 70 or something like that. 4 years for Yasmani Grandal was just never something that made any sense to me. It's still hurting them now because we know the owner's cheap as fuck. He's not going to spend any money.
Dude, Reinsdorf will never, ever spend money. Even when the team is good, bro, he ain't spending money. So all that being said, I don't want to harp on the Sox too much, right? Because we do still have a lot of baseball left to play this year. So they do potentially still have time to turn it around. Me and you don't seem to have faith and beliefs that they're going to do that. But, they got a chance. But I want to touch on the big rumor that keeps coming back up, man. It started off before the baseball season started this year. And now that team has pretty much gotten off to the start that we all basically expected them to, which is like middling. We're hearing the rumors again that they say if the Angels are not in it, Ohtani is up for trade and they will send him out. Dave, should either Chicago team try and call him up and say, hey, whoa, we got something we can send you, baby. What's happening? Would you sell your soul as a Cubs fan? Would you sell, say they wanted PCA and like 2 of the top prospects plus a couple players off the team currently? Do you sell your soul for him? Because we know what Ohtani is.
With an extension, yes.
Yeah, with the
if he's an extension, sure. PCA, Brennan Davis, Miguel Amaya, they want, give him anybody. I mean, seriously. I mean, you cannot get yourself caught up in, well, what if PCA turns it? This is like the Family Guy thing. The box could be anything. It can even be the boat that we're already being guaranteed. PCA could be a really, really good hitter. You got a good hitter that also throws 100 miles per hour as a Cy Young candidate. Forget about it. They want PCA. Pete, thank you for your service. I'm happy that we could use you to get Shohei Ohtani. If that's all he does for the Cubs organization, I'll build him a statue outside of Wrigley Field. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is that good that does not matter. And if you're the White Sox, whoever they want Eloy, you send them Eloy. They want Tim Anderson, Yohan. The Angels are in a spot where they can go expect group in the history of baseball, or they can completely rebuild their organization in one move and compete next year. That's how good Shohei Ohtani is. If he's going to sign a contract with whoever he gets traded to, they can do whatever they want. If you're the White Sox, give him anything. If you're the Cubs, give him anything. Bring Shohei Ohtani to Chicago. I want to see Ohtani hitting balls onto every street around Wrigley Field if I can. Waveland and Sheffield and Addis. I mean, he could hit foul balls back. I don't care. As long as I get to see him in a Cubs uniform hitting, I'm happy.
I'm with you there. I think Ohtani's such a special player that you have to give up whatever you have to get him here, right? Like you would have to do that. We talked about this before. It'd be perfect for him to play in that bandbox of Wrigley Field, right? Like we've seen what happens when guys with good power play in Wrigley Field. They put up very good power numbers. I mean, for God's sake, we almost saw Aramis Ramirez hit 50 home runs one year. And look, we know Aram, it was literally throw it low and outside and you'll get him out. Okay. So, and shout outs to Aramis. I loved you when you were here, but Jesus, did I hate the fact that literally everybody on the planet knew all you have to do is throw the pitch low and away and he is going to strike out every time. But to the point we're talking about, Ohtani is he's a special player in the fact that not only is he going to put butts in seats, but he's also going to give you a super high level of production. And with that being the case, it's like, okay, this guy's worth whatever you give up for him. I just want to remind anybody that might give me and Dave pushback here. I remember quite a few of you were all pissed off when we traded Gleyber Torres to make sure that we could get Aroldis Chapman and we could secure that World Series and secure our bullpen. I just want to point out to all of those people that Gleyber Torres for his career is like a 250 hitter.
Yeah, we didn't miss much on that. Yeah.
And remember, people, he was a top 10 rated prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He's a 250 hitter now.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't get caught up in that kind of stuff. And I'm looking right now. I mean, I'm using a baseball trade analyzer that was made by a former GM. I mean, his value, because he's on the last year of his deal, if you're the Cubs, I mean, you might be able to leverage that. You might be able to say, listen, that's fine. You don't want to trade him to us right now. He's going to be playing in Wrigley next year anyways, so that's fine. We'll wait the half season. But if you want to, get something for him, we got an offer. And I think that it's probably, it's going to take a few top prospects, right? Mm-hmm. But I think Absolutely. If you look at, I'm looking at like, Alcantara, Wisniewski, Amaya, maybe Mervis, maybe Casey, maybe Hernandez. 2 of those 3 added to what I had before. That might get it done. If that's the case, I mean, come on, who's going to say no to that offer? That you're getting 5 prospects that are top, 15 in the team's organization, and if you're the Cubs, you're getting Shohei Ohtani. For me, it's a no-brainer.
For me, if you're the Cubs, I personally, this is my mentality. Do whatever you have to do right now to go get Shohei right now, because look, at the end of the day, you don't want to get in a bidding war with the Yankees. Nope. Look, man, we both know this. He hits free agency. There is a greater than 75% chance he's going to the Yankees. We know this because they will say, what is your number? What's your number? What is it? Think about how much money they gave Garrett Cole. You think they ain't giving a dude that gives them offensive production too? Like an absurd amount of money, basically saying, name your number. So if you're the Cubs and you're that front office, I think as long, barring the Cubs team keeps playing good right now, right? You do whatever you have to do. You move heaven and earth and say, look, Angels, you guys aren't going to re-sign him. We can at least give you some prospects here that you could possibly bring up within a year or two and have some, guys that you can keep under control for 5-6 years, right? Here you go. But you have to move heaven and earth to go get that man. That can take your team from being, hey, we can compete for potentially a little bit of the division, and the wild card most definitely will probably be there at worst, to being, oh, we can win a championship.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the other thing to think about is they already have a few of their guys locked up long term, which helps out a lot when you're thinking about that. Ian Happ has an extension now. Nick Corner has an extension. Dansby Swanson's here for 7 years. Stroman's got a couple more years left. Steele's got team control for a little while longer. You have these prospects you can go after. You're going to be a team that everybody wants to play for. This is going to be like those teams in the NBA that these veterans say, I'll take league minimum to come play with LeBron, AD, and whoever else they got with them. That is the kind of team you're building. So you can round out your lineup like how the Padres round out their lineup with, a few international prospects they take chances on. They have a few guys who they just bring up. They go out and get some really cheap free agents, guys like Jurickson and Profar, who just, is he special? No. Is he a good guy for the 8-hole in your lineup? Absolutely. You're going to get guys like that if you get Shohei Ohtani. But if you don't get guys like that, you're just sit there middling and hoping that, you better hope PCA is an MVP then, because if not, you're going to be stuck in right in the middle where no team wants to be, where you're not getting top picks, but you're also not really contending for a championship. But this is the one move that takes you right to that level, like you were saying.
I think one thing that people always have to keep in mind is building a baseball roster is very similar in a sense to building a football roster. Not everybody on there has got to be the big play guy. Some of those guys got to be meat and potatoes. Some of those guys got to be the guys that are going to go out there, in baseball's case, grind out long at bats, make the pitcher just throw absurd amounts of pitches, have a higher on-base percentage, right? play great defense, do all the small things that you need, right? Willing to move guys, willing to sacrifice their at bat to just move a guy over to put him in better position. You need guys that are the glue of the team, right? That hold it all together, that make it work. Because baseball is weird, just like I do, right? Where, hey, if your top guys in your lineup, if your 1 through 4 hole are the only guys producing, your team is going to suck. You're going to be awful because you need those guys from 4 down to produce something. You need them to be able to extend innings, keep them going. Hey, how many times have we seen, Dave, where all of a sudden you're watching a game, it's like the 8th inning, and you're like, oh, the bottom of the lineup's coming up. Oh, man, and then these guys start the rally. That's the type of stuff you need as a good team. You need players that'll be able to do that. And we have one team in Chicago that currently has it, and another team in Chicago where it's like, bro,
like when you get to that bottom of that Sox lineup, man, it's just the White Sox are one of the only teams in baseball where you plan out going to the concession stand for when your team is batting. You're like, I'm not going to watch Lennon Sosa followed by Romy Gonzalez, followed by Hanser Alberto. I'm just not going to do it, man. I'm going to get a beer. And I'm gonna need a shot with it because if I'm gonna get through this end of the lineup, I'm gonna need a really stiff drink. It's that bad.
Yeah, you're right. Well, as we told y'all though, this is Chicago. This is a show about everything Chicago. And my man Dave, he's got something for you this week, and I got a little something for you this week. So, Dave, what's your because Chicago moment of the week?
Man, you just gotta love this city, man. There's nothing like driving to Wrigley Field. That first of all, the Cubs tell you before you get there. They say we highly recommend that you do not drive to Wrigley Field. They highly recommend you take the Pace bus and the CTA, take the L, take public transportation. And it's Chicago, so the transportation's everywhere. So I live out in the suburbs, so I can't really do that. So I drove down to Wrigley, man. Is there a more Chicago and more specifically a more Wrigley Field thing to do than to back into some random ass person's garage as your parking spot and paying them cash for it? I mean, it is phenomenal when you get to I use Spot Hero, man. There's like $25 a couple blocks from the stadium. I'm like, this is too good to be true. But hey, if I get my car towed, it's still gonna be cheaper than half the parking around the stadium. They ask for $300 on some of those places. And man, I get to this spot, and sure enough, directions are garage is going to be open. Pull right into the garage, back in, so that way it's easier to leave. Man, I mean, there's just nothing like it. How many times have you just parked in somebody's random spot, or you got your spot that you're eyeing? Man, you get up there and you got the folding chair sitting there on the side of the road, and you're like, man, I'm about to burn this folding chair, dog. I'm taking this spot.
Like, speaking of spots, right? It's a funny story. So when we went to the White Sox game last year, right? I remember we were trying to figure out where we're going to park, right? Because it's like, there's parking around the cell, but there's not really parking lots around Wrigley. So where are we going to park? So I pull up, I see one of the city workers out there, and I'm like, hey, where can I go? She's like, hey, just get in this lane, follow the traffic. It's going to take you right to the parking lot, right? She's like, don't give anybody your cash. Don't trust anyone. I was like, damn. Literally.
That's what you do in Chicago, though, man. You just see a line. You start walking up to people. I'll take 20. I'll take 20. I'll take 20. And have people just like, all right, cool. This is normal for me. Then you get up to the person that's actually taking the money, and they're like, $20, and you're like, oh no, they got my ass.
Yep. So it's like, there's great, but so I did what you did though when we went to Wrigley last year. Man, Spot here. Look, let me tell you something. If you are going in Chicago to somewhere that there is not a lot of parking, if you don't use Spot Hero, you, my friend, are a dummy. I'm sorry, because goodness gracious, do you know how? For those that have never been to Chicago, you will not find a parking spot in the city. You will not find one. You better get Spot Hero. Unless you go in somebody's neighborhood, which even then, it might get kind of questionable depending on the time of the year. I mean, if the weather's like it was yesterday, you sure as hell ain't going to find this spot, right? Because 1 minute it was raining, then it was snowing, then it was shooting down Dippin' Dots out of the sky. Like, I don't know, man. Like you're dumb if you don't use Spot Hero. I'm sorry. You really are. You
The
really
man
are.
said Dippin' Dots. I love it. They were.
Dude,
They were.
it was legitimate. Dippin' Dots was coming out of the sky. I was like, what is this, man? Like, oh man, yeah, me and the wife, we went to Sam's Club early, so we were out in it. It's like, what is this? Dippin' Dots coming out of the sky, bro? Like, this
There was
is
nothing
absurd.
like back in the day. Brookfield Zoo getting the Dippin' Dots, getting your little mold of the elephant in the pachyderm house. Man, living life. Man, I mean, it's crazy. But the thing is that other major cities I've been to, even they don't use Spot Hero very much. I have friends, when I was living down in Austin, I was like, oh, should we get Spot Hero? And they're like, for what? There's just parking garages everywhere, free garages for people to use. I mean, we don't have that in Chicago. You better get your credit card ready or start calling your accountant if you want to park in some of these garages. Can I afford this today? I don't know.
Dude, the fact that like you can go to try and park somewhere for like 3 hours in the city and they'll be like $40. What, bro? What?
And you
ain't valeting me and you want 40?
Yeah. And you better be out in 3 hours. After 3 hours, it's another, $30 an hour. So you get that 3 hours and 2 minutes. You get a nice little 70 spot out of the card. You gotta call your bank and be like, no, I know it was 70. I know it was just parking. I get it.
Like when we went to this restaurant downtown, right? I was like, hey, cool, I'll pay you to valet it. I ain't got no problem. Because when I come out the restaurant, you bringing the car right back to me. Cool, baby. I'm with that. Y'all can get money out of me. He gonna get tipped, baby. Thank you. Appreciate your services, right? But just go to a regular parking garage and have to pay that. No, they be losing their damn mind. I don't play that. Do not do it. Man. But that's Chicago for you, though, right?
Hey.
Why does it happen? It's very simple. Because Chicago.
Hey, I like that. We got the name of the show in there. Okay, this is a legit show now. I like it. Okay. That moment when they say the word and you're like, oh, that was it. There we go.
And then my Because Chicago moment of the week is, saw a video this week recently of like people were getting attacked. And then you heard some cops in the background saying, well, the new mayor wants to get rid of the police. So why don't you call him? Hey, buddy, listen, you're a cop. This is your job. Do your job. All I'm saying is if you don't like the mayor, too bad. Everybody voted. Get over it. Okay? Get over it. Do your job. In the immortal words of Coach Tibbs, do your job. It's that simple. That's it. And why do I find that to be the most Chicago ever? Because the cops here are always acting like they are so persecuted. But y'all are some of the highest paid cops in the country. In the country. Do your job.
Listen, I love unions. I think unions are great for society, man. But these unions in Chicago, they do act crazy sometimes. I mean, if we're this group isn't going to work if this person gets elected, but if that other person gets elected, then this group isn't going to work. It's like, man, okay, it's the so if we vote for this guy, we'll have the electricians, but we'll have no plumbers. But we'll be able to do plumbing if this guy gets elected, and if that woman gets in, then the teachers aren't going to be working tomorrow. I mean,
you know what I mean? It's like, what is this, bro? What is this?
Then you got Scabby sitting around somewhere. I don't know where Scabby's at today, but he's somewhere, I'm sure. There's somebody. He's going to be outside of the CPD offices soon, I'm sure. That's.
Oh God, but that's what I mean. It's like, hey, bro, look, man, do your jobs. That's all I'm saying, baby. You're in Chicago. We do not have time for that. I am not one of these people that's going to pass a narrative to you to tell you, oh my God, there's so much violence and all this. Like, no, like, first off, if you live anywhere with a high concentration of people, the level of violence always goes up. That's just how statistics work. That goes across the entire planet. The more people that are in a concentrated area, the higher the violence level is going to be. So the violence isn't really out of control here. I would just simply say, though, do your job. That's it. Do your job. If you're the police, do your job. That's it. Y'all get paid. Y'all get very, very well paid, and y'all have been protected in this city for forever and a day. Do your job. Okay? That's it. And don't be mad that people try and hold you accountable for doing your job in a correct manner, because y'all would hold anybody else accountable for not doing their job in a proper manner. So hopefully we'll see things get better here and everybody will start to settle down now that it seems like we actually have a mayor that's like about Chicago, but we'll see, right? We know how Chicago politics goes. There, sometimes it looks good at the front, and then you're like, oh no, at the back. So we'll see. I hope things go well. But that was my Because Chicago moment of the week. That's why. Why do these things happen, people? It's because of Chicago.
Because Chicago.
But we have got our live stream of the NFL Draft Round 1 coming up next week on Thursday, which is night 1 of the draft, people. So make sure you're there. We will be live via Twitch, and I'm going to try and do it via our YouTube channel too. It just depends on if it ends up working out with everything that I'm going to have open. I'm going to have to test the connections, make sure everything's smooth. You know, I don't want y'all to be looking at this and be like, what is this? You know, so speaking of the draft, though, me and Dave told you last week we were both hoping that, you know, the Bears did very great things with their first round picks. So, Dave, outside of the first round, we've pretty much, you know, we covered that very well there last week. Who are some of the players that you would like the Bears to grab outside of the first round?
Yeah, so I'm really more looking towards defensive depth because I think that you know, I think on offense, you know, if you go after a tackle in the first round, you drafted so many guys last year at the end of the draft that you already have your project pieces. Now, there might be somebody that jumps out at you, but, man, they have, you know, guys like, you know, Dean Kramer sitting there as a backup center right now. You know, just as an example, guys like that. You have Alex Leatherwood, who's trash, but you know, he's a backup, right? You got a backup, right? You have some backup. You got depth there.
I don't want to cut you off. You know what's so frustrating for me about Leatherwood? He has all the physical ability to actually be a good tackle, but his technique is so piss poor. It is ridiculous. Like, you're a big, strong guy, but you're always leaning forward on guys and just getting brushed out of the damn way. It's like, it's just so frustrating. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, man, it's all good. I mean, you're spot on. He, you know, so a couple just, I'm going to pick one cornerback and one linebacker I want to talk about really quick. I think it fit what the Bears got. So, first up is I do like the cornerback out of Purdue, Corey Trice. Because again, I want them to go after a guy with size, and that's kind of his thing. You know, at the top end, he's kind of, that's where he has his issue. That's why he's not a first round prospect, is because at the top end, you know, you get straight edge speed. He's not the fastest guy, but he's very physical. He's good at the line of scrimmage. He's good at getting after the ball. I think Corey Trice is a guy who, with one of those late second or early third round picks the Bears have, could very well be looking at an option.
Stay out of my head, Dave.
No way, really?
Legitimately, Corey Trice was somebody I was going to go to, because for me, dude, 6'3", you still ran a 4.4. You have enough speed to not get burned by the top end fast guys in the league, right? And like you said, at Purdue, man, he was a hell of a player. I think he was a guy that, because that team was not great, didn't really get the shine that he should. But when you watch his tape, you're like, oh my goodness, man, your hips are fluid. Like, you don't ever really seem to be in bad positions. You seem to understand the leverage that you need to play with out of certain route trees and stuff. It's like, it's amazing. So yeah, 100% with you on Corey Trice there.
Yeah, and the linebacker I was looking at, you know, I feel like with Edmonds and Edwards, you know, those guys are both, you know, Edmonds is good in the pass game, but he's so aggressive and so physical that he also is very helpful in the run game. So I would like for them to look, you know, I think Dylan Cole right now has the inside edge to be the third linebacker in that 4-3 defense, because I think Jack Sanborn's too slow, too worried about the run game as well. You can't have 2 out of your 3 linebackers be moving him molasses. So, you know, a guy who I think is pretty solid, a little better.
Be careful, Dave. You talking about that boy Sandberg? Hey, they're gonna come for you, Sanborn. They're gonna come for you, Dave. Like, they was coming for me. They was trying to come for me on Twitter last year, bro. Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about with Sanborn, bruh. He's at best average. That's it.
Ask any man. One of my best friends is a New York Giants fan. After Blake Martinez led the league in tackling, I was like, Blake Martinez is pretty nice. He was like, that man sucks. Yo, you could get tackles as a linebacker just by standing there. You could just be the only guy not getting blocked. And then it's you and the running back in a hole. And if you don't make the tackle, you're going to be on, come on, man, every single night, every single Monday night. I mean, literally, I mean, he doesn't do anything special. He's fine.
Somebody got to make the tackle.
Somebody's got to make the tackle. Him and Nick Kwiatkowski could always be the 4th best linebacker in a 4-3 defense. I mean, that is what they are. They're the 4th best linebacker in a 4-3. if they're on the field, you feel like, oh well, okay, you know, they're on the field, that's fine. But if you're expecting them to be a 1 or a 2, you're gonna be giving up a lot of yards. I promise you. So one of the guys, a little undersized for a linebacker, decent speed, decent in coverage, not very good in the run game, if we're being quite honest. But you know, again, that's what we're saying we're okay with that. Dorian Williams out of Tulane. I mean, talk about a program that has completely 100% turned the entire tide. I mean, Tulane was like an 0-12 team a couple of years ago, and they just won a New Year's Bowl this year. I mean, if that doesn't say everything you know about where they're at, and their defense was good, man. Dorian Williams is a good player. He flies around that field, good in pass coverage. Again, he's not very good at getting off blocks, especially when it comes to the run game. But you know, ultimately, I think he could be the right person to be on the other side of TJ Edwards, because you know Edwards is going to be great in the run game, and he's not really fast enough to cover most running backs. So you'll have the other guy on the other side of the field doing the exact opposite. I think he'd be in good shape. I think he'd be a guy to look at and could plug him in day one to play.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that is most definitely a completely accurate assessment of what he can do on the field, right? Like, I have my questions about his full-on coverage skills and everything. Well, not so much coverage skills, more so his run stopping skills. But I am a firm believer that in this 4-3 scheme, part of what your defensive linemen are supposed to be doing is keeping those guys clean. It's why consistently when we had Urlacher and Briggs, we had 2 ends that were good at run stopping, and we had 2 tackles that were good at run stopping. Why? Because a great run stopper that's on the D line doesn't necessarily mean that he's the guy making the tackle, but he's eating up blocks. He's staying gap sound. He's doing everything that you need him to do to make sure that the guys right behind him are going to be able to stay clean and make a tackle. So I'm with you there. That could be someone that would be very good for them. But my only thing is that I don't necessarily know if I want them to go linebacker early in this draft. And the reason I would be cool with like some 4th, 5th, 6th round guys, right? Maybe you find somebody that you can get some value. But the reason I'm not in that same direction is because we need to fix up front. We have to. The offensive line is going to be markedly better than it was last year, just by the fact that, first off, Braxton Jones is going to be better. We're moving Tevin to the left side, where Nate Davis is going to be on the right. Whitehair will probably be playing center for us again, which is where he should have been this entire time, right? Dude, Dave, tell me this. Are you just like me when you looked at how we've handled Whitehair and we have totally mismanaged it because he should have been a center this entire time?
I think him playing in a Pro Bowl speaks for itself. I mean, the dude literally he was a Pro Bowler at center. And they drafted James Daniels. And I was never a James Daniels guy. So when they started moving pieces around to accommodate him, I was not happy. But, you know, how it goes, I mean, you know, Cody Whitehair is, you know, they did this with Kyle Long, too. They misused Kyle Long. I mean, they started him as a guard, then he was tackling, he's back to guard. You know, Whitehair's drafted as a guard, then he plays center, and he goes to guard. Now they're bringing him back to center. I mean, it's not as easy as Kyle Long, Cody Whitehair make it seem, because they had success at all the positions. It's not that easy. Nope. It's not easy for a guy to go from one side of the line to the other, one interior to exterior, or vice versa. It's not.
I'm willing to go this far and say this much. We had Jason Kelce before Jason Kelce, but we decided to keep kicking him around everywhere on the line to try and fill holes otherwise. The James Daniels draft was only an issue because we decided to be stupid and not put James Daniel at guard, which he would have been able to use his athleticism at and have been a better player for us. Instead, we tried to make the guy all of a sudden start snapping the ball, which was a terrible idea, because in the NFL, that's not, you don't just start switching up who's snapping your damn ball. You know, like not when you have a good guy. When you have a good center, you do not start moving this guy around the line, because he's generally the guy who's calling out your protections. So you should maybe keep the guy who's really, really good there, like you said, who made a Pro Bowl there. Maybe you should keep him there. So
I got a hot take about the offensive line. I think center is more important than either tackle position. I think your center is, I know we pay for these left tackles to protect quarterbacks, man. I think you got to start paying centers. I would spend money to have the best center in football over having the best left tackle. I mean, when you look at today's NFL with these defensive tackles that are no longer, back in the day, man, it was Vince Wilfork, Casey Hampton types, guys that were 365, ran
Hold on.
75,
I ain't gonna let you talk about my man Vince Wilfork like that, because that dude was an absurd athlete at his size. He was like possibly one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen playing D tackle. It was absurd how light that dude was on his feet. But everybody else, though, you right. The Casey Hamptons and stuff in the world. Oh my God.
Casey Hampton, Pat Williams, and the Vikings, man. And then the Vikings had Pat and Kevin Williams. They were both the opposite. Kevin Williams was like today's defensive tackles, and Pat was like those nose tackles back in the day. They don't play, centers and guards don't face those guys anymore. Those guys that cannot get out of their stance quick enough. You are facing Aaron Donalds now. You are facing guys like, he's not that good anymore. Exactly. He's not that great anymore, but I think Geno Atkins his 13 sack season he had a few years ago in Cincinnati. You're facing
Chris Jones.
Guys. Yes, absolutely. Guys like that. If those guys, they get out of their stance quick enough and you got that center push back, it never matters how good your tackles are. Because if tackles make the right play and your center's getting pushed back into your quarterback's just going to have to take that extra 2 or 3 steps back right into where those tackles are correctly sending their defenders. So it just doesn't matter. They're calling out those blitz protections, man. That's so important, like you were saying. I think centers most important. You look at some of these teams that trade for centers, and all of a sudden they become top-tier elite offenses. Remember when Matt Ryan won MVP and the Falcons made the Super Bowl? What was the big move they made that offseason? They traded for Alex Mack from the Browns. That was their biggest move they made that offseason. So, if I'm the Bears, the first thing I care about over tackle, over guard, over another receiver, I want my center spot to be elite. And Cody Whitehair could be that guy. Or if you feel like, hey, we got to make a move for an elite center somewhere in the NFL, I say make it happen. But that's my most important spot that I want to fix.
So I will not give you excuse me. Sorry, people. I'm not going to give you pushback. I'm actually going to agree with you. And here's why I'm going to agree with you. We can go to a modern example, okay? A couple years ago, we already knew the Chiefs were a Super Bowl level team. Who did they go out and spend an early draft pick on? Freed Humphrey. Why did they do that? Because they knew, hey, wait a minute, we need to make sure we got a guy in the middle that can run the show for us. A guy that we know he is a multiplier, right? He makes other guys around him better. And that's what and I think that's basically what you were getting at. A great center is someone that is going to make especially the 2 guys next to him, way better than what just having one great tackle to do all day. Right? And I agree with you 100%. The one thing I will say, though, is if you have that shutdown tackle, it can also help you in some multitude of ways. But as far as total impact, I think you are correct. I think if you have a superstar center in the inside, a guy that hey, man, his man don't even count in the equation because he getting rid of him, right? That does crazy things for your offensive line. For people that don't understand, Creed Humphrey as an offensive lineman, I know some people, they love PFF. His PFF score as an offensive lineman was like 91.7, bro. So that dude was balling, and he has been. But you are right. So that's where my thoughts are, though, Dave, is where I say, and I think you kind of hit on where I was going, except I don't want to go on the offensive line, right? I personally want to go on the defensive line. And this one may surprise you, but for me, I really, I'm going to butcher his name, and I'm looking right at it. Attaboy.
Oh, man. Mm-hmm.
Dude, something I've watched through quite a few guys' highlights. That's generally what I'll do is I'll go back and there's some YouTube channels that I follow that I can basically watch all of your snaps put together over the course of like, I generally don't go back 2 seasons. I generally only watch your last season because I want to know what you are currently, right? I don't give a shit about what you were 2 years ago, or about what you are. And dude, just watching his tape, it's like, if he can just put it together to be consistent, man, dude, at that size, bro, running a 4.49, like, bro, I feel like if you can keep him from having to get double teamed, which is where that first round pick may come into play, and some of those free agency signings are going to come into play for you, right? I think he got something special there. I think Dave, what I see in him is, this is going to sound kind of wild, it's Javon Curse before the knee injuries. He's so athletic that I don't know, unless you have Pace Jr., Trent Brown, you know what I mean? Like some of these other great tackle. I don't want to disrespect him. He is the best tackle in the Trent Williams. Unless you got one of those guys, right? I think he could get at basically every other tackle in the league, man. And that's what you need. You need, especially in this draft, right? Because you're more than likely, that first round pick is more than likely going on offense, right? We both basically know what this is. So if you're going to do that, you got to get some value on some defensive players. And hey, with that second round pick that you got from the Ravens, I don't care if you got to trade back up, do whatever you got to do. That's a guy that I think you can get extreme value in, because his tape isn't consistent enough to scream to you, oh my God, he's the greatest player ever. But when he flashes, you're like, well, dude, I know what Eberflus is about. You ain't going to play if you ain't giving it hard every play. I mean, I think that's part of why some guys didn't find the field last year, Dave, when maybe they should have, because I don't think they were going hard every play. So that's, for me, that's my guy. That's my draft crush probably now this year, Dave. I ain't going to be honest with you. After I watched the one tape, I was like, oh, shit, this could be the one.
You don't guys tell me on a Northwestern prospect. You know I'm a Northwestern fan, and man, he balls there. And the other good things is, he's smart because he went to Northwestern, and number two is, that even if you have a tough season, some of these guys come from teams like Alabama and these top end programs, and then they come in and they lose for the first time, and you see changes. Mm-hmm. Changes start to come. They get out of that honeymoon phase of football. Now it's, man, my body hurts every day, and I'm 4-12. Come on, this sucks. Yep. It does suck. It's horrible. I can't even imagine going through that. But that coming off of them being a 1-11 program last year, that he's not the kind of guy that if you do have another bad year, which we don't think they're going to be anywhere near as bad as they were last year, but if you're sitting there at 6-8, 6-9 at the end of the year, he's still going to be playing. He's used to it already. Mm-hmm. I would love if they could get a hold of him. He's definitely a guy. I like Mozzie Smith as well out of Michigan. They're kind of in that same range of maybe like 10 or 15 picks or so. I think he'd be a good defensive tackle. And my philosophy is, right or wrong, is always after like the second round, if you're going defensive lineman, I always go after those small school guys. Because if you were good enough in high school to get selected to play for a team like Alabama, or Clemson or something like that, and all of a sudden you started faltering a little bit, I think that path is going to keep going. But you got these guys that got one offer, and it's from a school like, I don't know, I'll pick a random one right here. Your only offer was from Coastal Carolina back before they were, a decent program, and you're sitting there, Gerard Clark. I haven't watched any tape on this guy. He could be terrible, but or Devonsha Maxwell out of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And now all of a sudden you're a draft prospect. To me, that says that something has changed and something for the better. So I like going after Dominique Robinson last year out of Miami, Ohio. He's a receiver that they were like, man, we're just going to put you on the edge. And he did well enough to get drafted. So I think he could, hopefully get a few sacks this year, add to his rookie total. But, after those first few rounds, after Mozzie Smith, I'm looking at guys who played for Tennessee, Chattanooga, and teams like that.
So, as a Michigan fan, the one thing I would tell you, Dave, Mozzie Smith, I hate his inconsistency more than probably any other player in the draft that's like going to get drafted that high. The thing that bothers me about him is he'll make one big play, and then for the rest of the game, at times it'll be like, is he even on the field? Where's Mozzie at? Where'd he go? Is he not out there? Like legitimately, there was games where I was like asking that, where I'm like, wait a minute, dude, wait a minute. Is Mozzie supposed to be out? And then you look right, you're looking at the numbers, and you're like, oh, he is. He just ain't doing nothing. So I have questions about him, but I will say when, and maybe it's just the motor thing, right? Maybe he just needs to, he's got to get his motor up. When he's going, though, that man is damn near unblockable. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully the Bears just get it right. Like more than anything that we need, right, Dave? It's like, hey, Bears, just get it right. Just please, for our sake. Because I'm going to tell you a funny story, Dave, right? So I deal with the public, right? So with my job. So I was talking to this lady this week. And, as I'm taking her information, man, she tells me her email address, and it has to deal with her supporting the Packers, right? So I have a good laugh with the lady, and I'm like, hey, I was like, we were doing so great until I heard your email address. She's like, oh, why do you say? I was like, I'm a Bears fan for life, and so that's not the word. She's like, don't worry about it. She's like, don't worry. We all want Aaron out of here too. And it's like, damn, Packer fans is even that tired of you. But then again, this is quarterback number 2 in a row that they're dealing with this crap with. So, hey, it is what it is.
I don't know why they're so excited for Jordan Love. He's going to be trash.
Bruh, because their recent history has brainwashed them into saying, he's going to be great. He's going to be great. Every time we've brought in another guy, that guy always ends up being great, right? Because they can go back to when they brought in Brett Favre, right? They brought in Favre when they had, Todd Marinovich, I think was something like that, some garbage quarterback that they had, right? Then they had Brett, and then they brought in Aaron, and then Aaron carried it from Brett, right? They're brainwashed into just believing if we drafted him, he has to be good. If we brought him in, you know what I mean? So we'll see what happens there. I hope that Jordan Love crashes and burns. I don't look, man. I don't generally root against the black quarterback, but he happens to be in my division, so he can go to hell. So,
man, I don't think he's going to be any good, man. I don't think we got too much to worry about. I think that I think they'll have the worst quarterback in the division for a little while here, in my opinion.
Yeah, because as much as I criticize Kirk Cousins, he is he's the Mendoza line in football right now. He is. Think about it. If you got a dude that produces at about his level or above, you can win a lot of games. But if you below that Kirk Cousins line, you in trouble. You should be thinking about drafting a new quarterback.
Yeah, and well, I mean, according to Vikings fans, they got their guy a couple of years ago. That's Kellen Mond. So,
you mean the dude who ain't even on the team?
Whoa, he's not even with the team anymore. Oh, crazy Vikings fans. Y'all were so silly, man. Y'all were talking about Kellen Mond was better than Justin Fields. And then the man got cut. Now what? Now how do you feel?
Hey, all I'm going to say is if any of them dudes that they was claiming was actually better than Fields, how come they couldn't get on the field, and how come they weren't anything out there? How come no team told the Packers, we'll give you 2 first-rounders for Jordan Love?
Very interesting. Almost like they're just talking out their ass. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. You know how this works. But, Dave, tell people where to find you.
Oh, man. Hey, y'all can really help me out. Follow me. Don't worry about me so much. I just started doing some social media work for a local wrestling promotion. Y'all like wrestling. Y'all like wrestling. Premier Pro Wrestling is I'm doing some TikTok work for, and we'll get stuff over on YouTube and Instagram soon. So I'd appreciate a follow over there. That's pretty much it. I've been laying low on social media, man. You know how these people get on these socials, man.
Oh, I know. we both know. But yeah, at Just Spend a Man everywhere. You're going to see my pretty face, or you're going to see the ITC logo. But yes, people, we appreciate you coming and enjoying another resounding episode of your favorite Chicago sports show, and that is Because Chicago.